Titi sat frozen in her seat, her mind racing. Kunle, her old friend, the one who had always been by her side but never hinted at anything romantic, had just asked her to leave her husband for him. The words replayed in her mind. Divorce Jide and marry me. Kunle, what are you talking about? Titi's voice was low, almost shaking. I am married, for God's sake. I know, Kunle replied, his eyes pleading. But I know that you're not happily married with Jide. I've watched you, Titi. I've seen the way he treats you. Titi cut him off. How do you know anything about my marriage? Kunle sighed, leaning back on his chair. I've kept tabs on you, Titi. I've always been around, even if you didn't notice. I've been in love with you for years, he said bluntly, his eyes locked onto hers. I can't hide it anymore. Divorce Jide and marry me. It was a rainy Wednesday in Lagos. Traffic was heavy, and the evening was already settling in when Titi received a mysterious invitation for dinner from her childhood friend Kunle. She hadn't seen him in years, not since they graduated from the University of Ibadan. Life had happened, and Titi married Jide, a charming banker. But Kunle, well, she had no idea what he had been up to. As she sat in her car, staring at the rain-drenched streets of Victoria Island, her phone buzzed again. It was a text from Kunle. Titi, please, I need to see you tonight. It's urgent. There was an unusual tone in the message, something that stirred a mix of curiosity and unease in her heart. She wasn't sure why she felt a sudden tightness in her chest. After all, Kunle was her old friend. What could be so urgent? By 8 p.m., Titi found herself at Olanya Restaurant, a cozy spot in Lekki where she and Kunle had once celebrated birthdays during their university days. She entered, scanning the room for his familiar face. And there he was, sitting at the far end of the room, looking much more serious than she had ever seen him. Kunle, she called, approaching the table. He stood up, smiled, and hugged her tightly. Titi, it's been too long, he said, his deep voice sounding almost strained. They exchanged pleasantries, catching up on the little things, his new job, her son Toby, Lagos life in general. Then Kunle dropped a bombshell. I didn't invite you here to just catch up, Titi. I need to tell you something serious. Titi's heart skipped a beat. What is it? She asked, feeling her pulse quicken. I've been in love with you for years, he said bluntly, his eyes locked onto hers. I can't hide it anymore. Divorce Jide and marry me. Titi sat frozen in her seat, her mind racing. Kunle, her old friend, the one who had always been by her side but never hinted anything romantic, had just asked her to leave her husband for him. The words replayed in her mind. Divorce Jide and marry me. Kunle, what are you talking about? Titi's voice was low, almost shaking. I am married, for God's sake. I know, Kunle replied, his eyes pleading. But I know that you are not happy with Jide. I've watched you, Titi. I've seen how he treats you. Titi cut him off. How do you know anything about my marriage? Kunle sighed, leaning back in his chair. I've kept tabs on you, Titi. I've always been around, even if you didn't notice. The room suddenly felt smaller, The air thicker. Titi's mind was spinning, and for a brief second she wondered if Kunle was right. Was she truly happy with Jide? Their marriage wasn't perfect, but whose was? Kunle leaned forward. Titi, listen to me. Jide is not the man you think he is. What are you talking about? She asked, her voice now filled with skepticism. He's having an affair. Titi had stopped. She stared at Kunle, the words barely registering in her brain. You're lying, she whispered. I am not. I have seen him, Titi, several times. I know it's hard to believe, but I swear it is true. Titi wanted to scream, to storm out of the rostrum, but something in Kunle's eyes told her he wasn't lying. Or at least, he believed what he was saying. Titi didn't sleep that night. Jide came home late, as usual, and slipped into bed without saying much. His usual routine. She watched him in the dim light, his face calm and peaceful in sleep. Could it be true? Could her husband be cheating on her? Her mind wandered back to Kunle's words. Divorce him and marry me. How could he suggest such a thing? Was he trying to manipulate her? Or was he genuinely concerned? Titi turned to the ceiling, her thoughts a tangled mess. Something had changed between her and Jide. But was it enough to believe Kunle's claims? The following evening, Titi couldn't hold it anymore. When Jide returned from work, she was ready to confront him. Jide, we need to talk, she said as he loosened his tie. He looked at her, surprised by her serious tone. What's wrong? Titi took a deep breath. Are you cheating on me? The room felt silent. Jide's expression unreadable. After what felt like an eternity, he responded. Where is this coming from, Titi? I just need to know the truth, she replied, her voice steady, but her heart racing. Jide walked over to the window, staring out at the streets. I don't know what you have heard, but I'm not cheating on you, Titi. His words hung in the air, but Titi wasn't convinced. There was something in his tone, something evasive. The following week, Titi decided to take matters into her own hands. If Kunle's accusations were true, she needed proof. She called her friend Fumi, who worked at a private investigation firm in Ikeja. Fumi, I need a favor, Titi said after explaining her situation. Fumi agreed to help, though she warned Titi that she might not like what she found. Within days, Fumi had gathered information that shattered Titi's world. Jide had been meeting a woman frequently at an upscale hotel in Victoria Island. The pictures Fumi sent to Titi's phone made her heart ache. It was true. Titi couldn't breathe as she scrolled through the images on her phone. Her husband, the man she had built a life with, was standing in front of a hotel, laughing with another woman. They looked close, intimate. She sank onto her bed, tears filling her eyes. How had her life come to this? Had she been blind all along? The doorbell rang, pulling her out of her thoughts. It was Kunle. She hadn't planned on seeing him so soon after their last conversation, but he had insisted on coming over. Titi, have you thought about what I said? Kunle asked as soon as he entered. Titi looked at him, her face pale and her voice shaking. I found out the truth. Kunle nodded slowly. I am sorry, Titi. But now you know what I've been trying to tell you. Jide isn't worthy of you. Titi shook her head, trying to hold back the tears. I don't know what to do. Kunle reached out, gently touching her hand. You don't have to make any decisions right now. But just remember, Titi, I am here for you, always. Days turned into weeks, and Titi found herself caught between her love for Jide and her growing trust in Kunle. She hadn't confronted Jide about the evidence Funmi had gathered, but she had distanced herself from him. Every touch felt foreign, even conversation hollow. Kunle was different. He was there, supportive, always saying the right things. But Titi was torn. Could she trust him? Or was he just taking advantage of her vulnerability? The decision weighed heavily on her, but time wasn't on her side. Titi could no longer hide her coldness towards Jide. It was beginning to show, even in front of their son Toby. The family dinners, once lively and filled with laughter, had become silent. One evening, as they sat at the table, Jide finally confronted her. Titi, what's going on with you? You've been distant. You barely talk to me anymore. Titi stared at her plate, avoiding his gaze. I don't know what you're talking about. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Jide's voice was low, but his frustration was clear. If there is something wrong, let's talk about it. Titi sighed, the weight of the truth pressing down on her. Jide, I know. I know about the other woman. Jide froze, his fork suspended mid-air. He looked at her, his expression shifting between surprise and guilt. He dropped his fork and leaned back in his chair, his face unreadable. How did you find out? He finally asked. The tension in the room was suffocating. Titi's heart pounded as she waited for Jide's explanation. She had imagined this moment 100 times, but now it was here. She felt more confused than ever. Jide ran a hand through his hair. Titi, I never wanted to hurt you. It just happened. Titi's eyes welled up with tears. Happened? That's your excuse, Jide sighed, looking away. I'm not proud of it, but things between us haven't been the same for a long while. You know that. So you decided to cheat? Titi's voice cracked. Instead of talking to me, instead of trying to fix things, you chose this. Jide couldn't meet her gaze. It wasn't planned. I didn't want it to happen. But I got lost, Titi. Titi wiped her tears, her mind spinning. Was this really her life? The man she had trusted, the father of her child, had betrayed her so easily. And now, all of it was crashing down on her. Later that night, Titi sat on the edge of her bed, scrolling through her phone. Her thoughts were chaotic, her emotions too raw. She didn't know what to do, who to turn to. Almost instinctively, she found herself texting Kunle. Kunle, you were right. Kunle's reply came quickly. Titi, I'm so sorry. Do you want me to come over? We can talk. Titi hesitated, but eventually replied, Yes, please. I can't do this alone. Kunle arrived within the hour, bringing a calming presence into a chaotic world. He sat beside her, holding her hand as she explained what had happened. She told him about Jide's confession and how it had shattered her. I don't know what to do, Kunle, she whispered. leaning onto his shoulder. Everything feels like it's falling apart. Kunle held Titi in silence for a moment, letting her emotions settle. Titi, you don't have to go through this alone, he said gently. I've always been here for you. I always will be. Titi pulled away, wiping her tears. But what am I supposed to do, Kunle? My marriage is falling apart. And you're asking me to leave him for you. I am confused. Kunle looked into her eyes, his expression serious but soft. I won't pressure you, Titi, but I meant what I said before. I love you. I've loved you for years, even when you were with Jide. And if you give me a chance, I will make you happy. Titi felt a mix of emotions. The stability Kunle was offering felt comforting. But at the same time, her heart was heavy with the wreckage of her marriage. Could she really end it with Jide and start a new life with Kunle? The next morning, Jide's behavior changed drastically. He was more attentive, cooking breakfast, trying to engage her in conversation. He even played with Toby, something he hadn't done in weeks. Titi watched him cautiously, wondering if this was guilt or something else. Titi, Jide said softly after they put Toby to bed. I don't want to lose you. I know I messed up, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes to fix things. Titi stared at him, her mind racing. A part of her wanted to forgive him, to believe that they could rebuild what was broken. But another part of her, the part that was still raw from the betrayal, wasn't sure if she could trust him again. We can't just go back to how things were, she said, her voice shaking. You broke something, Jide. How do you think I'll trust you after this? I'll prove it to you, Jide said, taking her hand. I'll go to counseling. I'll cut ties with her completely. I'll do anything. Please, just give me a chance. Titi didn't answer immediately. She was torn between the desire to hold on to the life they had built together and the weight of Kunle's words pressurizing her heart. Divorce him and marry me. The idea still lingered. The next few days were emotionally exhausting for Titi. She found herself caught between Jide's sudden effort to mend their relationship and Kunle's quiet but constant presence. Every time she saw Jide trying, guilt gnawed at her. He was the father of her child, and they had shared so many years together. But could she truly forgive him for breaking their marriage? On the other hand, Kunle's voice was in her ear, reminding her of the possibility of a fresh start. He had been supportive, never pushing her too far, but always making it clear that he was willing to build a new life with her. When Titi looked at Kunle, he saw security, warmth, and a love that had always been patient, waiting for the right moment. That night, she had a long conversation with her best friend Funmi. Titi, you can't rush this decision, Funmi said. You have to be sure. If you forgive Jide, it has to be because you want to, not because you feel obligated. But if you leave him, make sure it's what you truly want. But what about Kunle? Titi asked, torn. He's offering me something different, something I never felt with Jide. Funmi sighed. Kunle loves you, but don't jump from one relationship to another because you're hurting. Take your time, Titi, no matter how hard it is. Jide followed through to his promise. He enrolled them in marriage counseling, scheduled regular date nights, and started being more present in Toby's life. For a while, Titi found herself softening, remembering the reasons she had fallen in love with him in the first place. One evening, as they returned from a counseling season, Jide held her tightly. Titi, I'm not perfect. I made a mistake. But I promise you this. I will never put you through this pain again. I will spend the rest of my life making it up to you. Titi's chest tightened. The sincerity in Jide's eyes was undeniable, but the scares were still fresh. Could love really conquer everything? Even as Jide tried to rebuild their marriage, Kunle didn't fade away. He remained patient, never pushing Titi, but always there when she needed him. His text messages were simple, checking in on her well-being, offering to meet up if she needed to talk. They occasionally met for coffee, and each time Titi felt the pull between her past with Jide and the possible future Kunle was offering. One afternoon, after a particularly emotional counseling season with Jide, Titi found herself sitting across from Kunle at a quiet cafe. I'm trying, Kunle, she said, stirring her cup of tea. But I'm so confused. Jide is making an effort, and part of me wants to believe he can fix things. But on the other part, it feels like too much has been broken.